You started working out to build some muscle and burn some fat. You've been crushing 3 days a week and seeing some decent results from it. You were talking with your friend recently and he said he hits the gym 5 to 6 days a week, and that if you switch it up, you start seeing way better results. You're contemplating if you should switch things up or not, and if it will actually be that much more helpful. You wish that there was a video that would explain what to do. How many days per week should you work out? This is a really common question that people are often confused about and not sure what to do. You can find people who hit the gym 3 days per week regularly and see pretty good results. But it often seems like those who hit the gym more frequently, such as 5 or 6 days per week, get better results. We could just go back and forth about what people think or what they say, but instead we want to look at what science shows us on this and help us in deciding what's the best option for you. When we compare 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 days a week of training, you get very similar results depending upon a few key things. Number 1, weekly volume. In our last video on which is the best rep range to build muscle, we discussed how volume and muscle building are very related to one another. Typically, the more volume you do, the more muscle you build. There is a point at which it becomes negative, but that's a topic for an upcoming video. In general, we see that when weekly volume is equated, training more or less days per week doesn't inherently make much more difference for building muscle. We can see this supported by research studies such as Kandau and Burke 2007, Schoenfeld 2019, Damas 2019, and many others. However, for strength and fat loss, there can be a slight advantage to training more frequently. Calhoun 2018, Grzyk 2018, and Ralston 2018 all identified that there was a trend in favor of higher frequency for strength gains. Pina 2020 compared 2 and 3 days per week for training, and while strength was very similar between the two groups at the end, the 3 times per week group saw twice the amount of fat loss. With that said, these are relatively small differences, and with equated volume, which we're going to discuss more later, we can expect relatively similar results. Number 2, average effort. As we compare frequency, an important factor is the effort used in each individual session. When it comes to maximizing stimulus from our training, we see that we need to be somewhat close to failure on most of our sets. In general, a guideline of being within 5 reps of failure is often used and a good general cutoff. If this is maintained across sessions, then we should see similar results. 3, minimum stimulus per muscle group. When we look at most of the research on this topic, it's not necessarily comparing workouts per week, but how many times per week you train a muscle or a movement. What we see is that if we compare training a muscle only once per week, such as the body part split, which started getting more popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, with more frequent training, such as 2 or 3 times per week, there is a big difference, with 2 or more times per week winning out. There seems to be this distinct cutoff at least 2 times per week for optimizing muscle growth of hitting each major muscle group. Training a muscle group more frequently doesn't inherently seem to bring a big benefit. This is an important consideration, which we'll discuss more in depth in a moment. Those 3 components are critical to consider when we start comparing workout frequency. Now, with the 3 things said, there are a few other considerations that we should discuss and help add more context. When someone is a novice trainee, they can use less total volume, less effort, and hit muscle groups less frequently and still see pretty good results. As someone gets to a more intermediate stage, they begin needing more volume, needing to hit more effort, and hitting more muscle groups more frequently. And as an advanced trainee, we often need to progress our weights and cycle through volume and intensity phases, but still maintain those details that we discussed previously. Where the days per week we'll start to see different results will be when we begin changing variables such as per session volume, per session effort, weekly volume, and individual variability. We see that per session volume has a bit of a bell curve effect, where 4 to 8 sets seems to be the sweet spot for more advanced trainees, and exceeding that starts to provide diminishing returns. As well, a high per session volume on a particular muscle group or movement can hinder strength and volume capabilities in subsequent days. Using a more frequent dosage can reduce this and accommodate more total volume across the week. This is one detail that's often missed in this conversation and is an important one to consider given how important volume is. As well, effort through a session often starts to diminish as the session gets longer. Most people aren't going to be able to repeat good performance and put in good effort towards a ton of sets. That's where a higher frequency can again be better for sustaining a higher output on each individual set and through the entire workout and training week. Further, individual variability does need to be factored in. When we look at the results from various research studies, we can see that within a group, there can be a big response change where some people respond positively to high or low frequency, but then others don't and have a poorer response from it. Finally, other things that we should be considering that aren't based specifically on muscle physiology. The length of the session. If you have only 30 to 45 minutes per day to train, you're going to find it hard to only go 2 to 3 days a week and get in enough volume with a good intensity if you're past the beginner stage. Instead, you'll likely need to go 4 to 5 days a week at a minimum. Then, days per week that you can actually train. This is sort of the flip side of the last one, where for some people they can't get to the gym very frequently. Sometimes people's schedules only allocate 2 to 4 days of training per week. For those people, it's going to be ideal to do a bit longer sessions to maximize their outcomes instead of just the short 30 to 45 minutes. And then enjoyment. At the end of the day, going to the gym is meant to be a focus on your health. And if you're someone who either loves the gym or doesn't like the gym very much, that should be considered. For those who really enjoy training, you're probably going to see better results by splitting up your volume and going to the gym a bit more frequently. For those who don't really like going to the gym, you'll probably be better off dropping your frequency down slightly and only going to the gym 2 to 4 days a week. So when we reflect on all that information, there isn't a clear-cut answer that's going to be specific to all people, but down to individual cases. You want to pick a frequency that's going to accommodate your life and enjoyment. If you want to try to maximize your outcomes, monitor your training volume, your training effort, and frequency you hit each muscle. Over time, progress these things as needed. And if you plateau, consider re-examining them and utilize your training frequency as a possible means to increase these things. Hopefully this helps you out and give you a little bit more context to the conversation. If you need a program to help you crush your training, check out the programs that we offer down in the description box below. We've got options for training at home with no equipment, minimal equipment, and fully stacked gyms. Plus, we have lots of additional plans to support you in mobility, strength, stability, and rehab needs that you might have. I'll link all of that down below in the description box. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.